Welcome back to Breaking News with BSU. Okay, so this is podcast 04, and we will be discussing POC, well, people of color, in their entertainment business as the second part of our Black History Month session. So first, we're just going to start talking about the history of POC in the entertainment business, and this goes way back to honestly just the beginning of television, especially when there were very frequently Black minstrel shows, which essentially were just shows to make complete fools out of African Americans. And of course, on the other side, this also goes with the consistent use of blackface in early entertainment, where white people would essentially slather their face in blackface paint and again continuously make fun of African Americans and instill the harmful stereotypes that our society is still based on today.
And often these were the only jobs that were available to Black people in the entertainment industry, which is really harmful because it becomes a struggle of whether you're going to make money or if you're going to feed into the harmful stereotype that society has placed on you as a Black person. So playing the character of an aggressive woman or playing a feminine male as seen in the movie Medea, it's really hard to break free from these stereotypes now in television because these characters are like tokenized and like the funny Black guy is seen in so many movies and shows even today. So just these little characters and ideas are still very affluent in television.
Exactly, and although that a lot of these happened earlier when the start of television was just happening, a lot of these same foundations for these same harmful stereotypes could once more be seen in today's television, today's movies, or even in just real life experiences. There's been a lot of different situations where I've seen people take on the stereotype that they feed into or certain things like that. So I feel as though these kind of, even though they happened a while ago, which wasn't even a while ago because once again, television is fairly recent, but a lot of these harmful stereotypes, they're still affecting us today and they still have a good grasp on the entertainment industry. So we need to look for ways to break from these stereotypes and figure out ways how to get away from them.
In entertainment broadly, and I'm thinking specifically with music and TV shows, I'm thinking about how colorism is also a prevalent force in when I'm thinking of token Black characters. Oftentimes there will be the white main character, and if there is a best friend that's Black, she's just the side character. She doesn't have a romantic interest. She's just there to spew jokes, and that definitely has impacted a lot of Black girls growing up. But on top of that, if there is like more diverse representation of, or a more varied representation of Black people, the lighter skinned, more white looking Black character is always the one that is the most desirable in the TV show. And there is a clear hierarchy of dark skinned women being the least attractive in entertainment, and that stereotype persists and is representative of how that still affects dark-skinned people in the Black community.
And to dive into like representation of African Americans in the entertainment business, I feel like a lot of movies that have like African American actors as the main character are usually comedy movies or comedy films. Like, you don't really see a lot of African Americans in musicals or, like, drama movies, I guess.
Yeah, and it wasn't just until these recent years that African Americans start getting more prominent roles in movies. I feel as though, once again, to touch back on to what Soap said about how African American characters usually play the side characters when it comes to a duo of like a white person and a Black person. I feel as though a lot of African Americans, they didn't start getting these main roles until when television became more recent and more modern. And I feel as though, that's not fair for us because it's taken many years for us to earn a lot of things as African Americans and as people of color. So it's kind of the one entertainment thing.
And I also think the lack of representation and also colorism can really affect like self-confidence and identity, because I'd say as a dark-skinned Black girl, it makes it so that like growing up, a lot of times you're nitpicking how you don't fit in or what you don't see, and then when you see in real life, the comparison can really affect how you see yourself, and then growing up it affects confidence, and people wonder why dark-skinned black girls can be angry or bitter or things like that, comparing themselves and things like that. But it's like you see it in media, that's your only representation of how you don't fit in.
And then to add on to what Chloe said, I feel like when the Black Panther movie got released, it kind of started like it allowed people to realize how black people they don't really have a highlight in the entertainment business. And I feel like that's not right, because it should have been people should have had awareness of this prior to the movie release.
And that's actually a really good point, because you notice that movies or TV shows that have a mostly black cast are written or directed by a black person. So it's basically like black people trying to help out other black people in the entertainment business at this point.
And I feel as though it's really important for young black children to not see themselves represented just in a single faceted way. Like Maya said, you often see black people in comedy roles as the comic relief, and I'm thinking about how I have not really seen any black women, especially not dark-skinned black women, be the main character in a romantic movie. They're not put in positions where black women are seen as gentle and soft and feminine and desirable. We are constantly pushed into a box of being aggressive and being the angry side character, or just being there for comic relief. And I think that when even now when we have the Princess and the Frog movie, I feel like black women still feel constricted to that, because that is one movie that all of us are put into a box of. Recently I was in a class and everyone was going around and saying which Disney princess they thought they would be based on how they look, and when it came to me, everyone was like, oh yeah, you're Tiana. And I felt very uncomfortable, even though I love that movie, that is the only option for me out of every Disney princess, the only person I can relate to because of the color of my skin.
Exactly. And people, I feel as though the main characters who are African American in these new movie roles, when the reaction of these roles being changed. So let's say, for example, the Little Mermaid movie, where the Little Mermaid who was white and was now African American in the live action play, the reaction off of that was very, very negative, and it was just the actor was being torn apart just because of her skin color, and a lot of people saying that just because she's black, she's not allowed to play that role, even though we shouldn't be limited to what we have to play based off of the societal foundations that people put in place for us, long story short.
And a lot of these roles that black people have gotten, it's a lot of the same actors, and this is really harmful for everyone, really, because it's only a couple figureheads of the black community representing everyone as a whole. And this is hard to deal with both as children and as a society, because we're grouping everyone under these few people, and it's really not good for complete representation and just to see yourself in the media, but also to see that black people can do more than what is seen on television.
And I believe that there is so much diversity within the black community when it comes to black queer people, black disabled people, black people with certain illnesses. It's so interesting that when you imagine someone, a disabled person, you're probably imagining a white disabled person. It's so interesting that, let's say, if you imagine someone with an eating disorder, you probably are imagining a thin white girl, when black women have the highest rates of eating disorders in the United States. It's funny that when you think of someone who is suicidal, you usually think of a white teenager, when black men have the highest suicide rates in the country. There are so many aspects and facets of the black community, and we have so much diversity to us, and when we're presented in a single way in the media, that is the view that people have of us, and it is weaponized against us. And true representation of all people in the black community is just going to get us a step further towards black liberation.
Exactly. People group us in this group of the black people when we are so much more than that. We are not just the black people. We have so many different groups. We have so many different layers. Yet nobody touches on that. They don't care to touch on it. And that's why we need to start making the progress and start making the movement towards getting that attention, and start making the conversation about us as well, and not just about how we will fit into the box that we have been set in.
As a closing note, I would love our listeners to take a moment and think back to the Will Smith situation. I would just like to point out that despite your opinion on whether what he did, to clarify what he did when he went on live television and slapped somebody, whether that was, in your opinion, right or wrong or unfair, whatever it is, Will Smith got dragged so hard and nearly had his entire lifelong career ended over this singular action. But I want to just pose the question of, think if that same thing would have happened for a white person. How many white actors or music artists say the N-word, do very questionable things, have multiple sexual assault allegations, and don't even get questioned? They don't get canceled's not even in the vocabulary. But Will Smith, because he is a black man and he was upset visibly, nearly had his entire life ended
after he was provoked by
in defending a black woman who was subject to anti-black racism by another black man in the community.
But once again, they're not ready for that conversation. But I think that's a good point to end our podcast for today.
All right, thank you for listening. We'll see you guys next week.
See ya.